Welcome once again here to the Student Activity Center on the campus of Indiana University in South Bend, Indiana. Glad you can join us here for the Scott Cooper Show. My name is Paul Condry. I'm the president and founder of Regional Radio Sports. Scott Cooper on the far side in the red, and in the middle, the man who really kind of put us both in motion to make some impacts here at Coop, and Steve Bruce, former athletic director, women's basketball coach. I know neither one of us would be here if it wasn't for his impact, so we're so grateful for him over the many, many years. But one of the things I want to kind of talk about here is we get this party started here for the 2025 year. It's been a fun year here as you look back and reflect back on 2024. Some exciting things that happened on campus. Let's give us a flyover and a quick review of some things that both of you guys were pretty excited about under the 2024 watch.
Yeah, I think, just the way things are moving forward here. We've got two new coaches in softball and volleyball with Annie Denke and Callie Toposki, respectively. Callie kind of came into a tough situation, handled it really well, got a nice, competitive group this year and seems to be doing well in recruiting. And Annie, we're looking forward to her first season. Baseball looks like they're going to have, a pretty good year this year. A lot of pitching brought in. You see those guys down there working quite a bit. And, obviously Coach Bruce's team's off to another great start here at 14-4, I think, 15-4, something like that. Yeah,
14.
So yeah, having a really good season again, and we're kind of bringing up the rear around here, but we're starting to get better too. So I think things are moving in the right direction, and we're excited about what 2025 has to bring.
Well, Steve, from your standpoint, you were sitting in that chair as the athletic director for a long, long time, and you've opted to hand the ball off, if you will. I know you're a football guy, so you can appreciate the that mindset. But how is your young protege doing as the athletic director? I know you can. You're only 7-8 feet away from his door. You can go say, hey, have you thought about this, or have you done this, or hey, get your head on straight, or whatever. I mean, he's coachable, I think, right? Isn't he?
He takes coaching well, yeah. So he's a lot better than I was, by the way.
Okay.
In the AD position.
We're gonna take your word.
Never
for that
have more false words been spoken.
That's the short answer to your question. Yeah, I knew Scott would do a great job. He's on top of stuff and energetic and ready to roll with it. Has some good ideas. I mean, we've already got some weight room improvements around the corner and some fundraising things. He does a lot better at those kind of things than I did, and so it was a good move, I think, for both of us.
Do you miss the day-to-day operations of being the athletic director? I know the answer to this, but I have to ask.
The answer is no, I don't. No, I'm a basketball coach. That's what I really like to do, and as Scott would attest to, when you do both, you got to figure out how to spread things around a little bit, and when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So right now I say yes to basketball all the time. I don't have to say no to anything. Scott's still got to figure out how to get his practice organized and his recruiting and his scouting and all that kind of stuff, in addition to all the day-to-day duties that the athletic director has, and those can be steady, but they can also change quickly, so if something comes up. So it's a challenging position to be in for sure, but again, he's done a great job and he'll continue to do a great job.
Well, I think that was a $20 answer. I think I'll pay later, but nonetheless, you mentioned recruiting, and that was really that's a great segue to go into what I wanted to talk about. We're of the age, you and I, Steve, we're recruiting. We've seen recruiting cycle come from, hey, listen, I need to see Billy Joe or Billy Sue or whatever the case may be. I need to see them all the time. We're in gymnasiums. We're living on the road watching AAU tournaments. I'm using basketball as our reference point here. And today's technology allows you to not necessarily have to do that. But at the same time, it's sometimes not, depending upon who you are, your program. It may change the way you go in building and cultivating relationships. So I want you to take me back to the beginning of coaching on how recruiting was for you and some things you thought were pivotal in recruiting. And how are some of those things now and today in 2025? How dramatically the shift is? Is the shift because of technology, or is it just because I've changed, I have matured, I have evolved?
Well, so going back to your original thoughts on recruiting, that's how it used to be, right? Now, we here at IU South Bend and at the NAI level is a little bit different and a little bit more challenging because our staffs are small.
Sure.
So the technology has probably made that better for us and easier for us because there's ways that you can watch AAU tournaments that are streamed, right? So you can see kids, I think, maybe a little bit more, they're a little bit more accessible, those games, to see than they were back in the old days. I mean, I remember when I was at VU, there was, and I think they probably still have it, but the AAU 16s were down in Orlando, Florida at Disney World, right? And there are probably 16 sites down there. The games are 45 minutes, and they were spread probably an hour apart. So, I mean, rental cars are zooming, breaking the speed limit all over down there. Where we'd go to one site, the first game's at 8 a.m., the next one's at 9 o'clock. We're going 20 miles somewhere else, back in the car, doing that all day long. And that still happens, but for us at the NAI level, we have some different ways to go about doing it that are a little bit more time-friendly, I would say. I will say this, the most important thing is never changed, and that's building relationships. That's never changed. I learned that when I was at Valparaiso. I liked that. That's the part I liked about recruiting. The part I didn't like about recruiting was all the hustle bustle, driving around and all that kind of stuff, and flying here and flying there. I mean, I remember one time I flew to Las Vegas. They didn't have a rental car that had air conditioning, so I was driving a van around.
Oh, my.
Yeah, in July, 100, you know what it is in Las Vegas, right? So, anyways, relationships, that's the top reason. I mean, kids, young people, they're going to come to play college basketball at your school for a number of reasons, but the number one reason is probably the relationship you develop with them. Then I would say, secondly, they want to know who their teammates are. And then I would say school and degree and all that kind of stuff comes next. Now, you may think that that's not the right order, but academically, colleges are going to provide degrees, and unless you're going to MIT or Harvard or Yale or something like that, you get a degree. So they're not going to, this is just my opinion, they're not going to put a certain school to the top of their list over the relationship they have with the coach and the relationships that they believe that they will have with their future teammates.
Coop, from your standpoint, you're relatively, even though there's a couple gray hairs up there now, make no mistake about it, you're still really relatively young in the whole recruiting thing. Now, people may not understand that dynamic, but I mean, 13 years here, plus all the other times, other places where you've stopped along the way, recruiting has changed in your short time as a coach. Give us an idea as you look back and when you were a GA, when you were being recruited. I mean, how have you changed and how are you using technology? I know that you're still actively involved in some of your student athletes' lives, and yet they're completely out of the building. They're going on with their lives, and you're still a mentor to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Bruce hit it on the head. So much of it's just about the relationships you build with the guys, and it's, I don't know, 23 or 24 for me, but, when you got into it, identifying kids was so much more difficult. Just the ones that, you're always starting, do they have the talent to play for you before you're even building the relationships? Because if they don't, you don't want to waste their time or any of that. So, at first it used to be, videotapes that you're sticking in the VCR and watching, are they good enough? Or you're getting out to, the big AAU tournaments Coach Bruce just talked about there in Orlando. That used to be a huge one that you go down to. Now they're spread out everywhere in the country every single weekend, so you're not going out quite as much maybe as you used to during the summer, just because you can't afford to do it. It's cost a few $100 to get into those things. So when you were there to see 30 kids, great. Now when there's only 3 kids that you want to see at that, then they're not really worth the investment. So you kind of have to just adapt accordingly. But the flip side of that is everything is online now, so identifying the talent is in some ways easier than it used to be, because you can get the different streaming services that they have for those, and pull up every single game when you want to watch them. You don't have to watch them on their clock live. You can say, you know what, I got the kids to bed tonight. I'm going to just turn on, so-and-so's game and see if they're good enough. And then once you get to that point, they're good enough. That's where the the relationship building stuff is probably still the same. You're still on the phone with them, or maybe text messaging a little bit more, I guess, now than what you did. Text messaging wasn't a thing when I started out, but I think those type of things haven't changed at all, and I think the last thing, and Coach Bruce really talked about it there, is you're finding the kids for whom are fit for you, but for whom you're also a fit, and that's always the most difficult part, because a lot of 18-year-olds don't know what they want, and in this day and age where it's so easy to transfer now, we haven't really had that problem here on our campus with really a lot of our teams, in large part because we have so many things that fit so many people, and you got to be at a place that that has those things going for you, or it's going to be a rough ride no matter how well you do your job.
Steve, when you were coaching with Coach Freeman at Valparaiso University, I know that you were on the road, you were doing all the things you needed to do. But since your time moving into the NEI here at IU South Bend, well, we've seen a major shift in education-based college athletics. We certainly have in regards to kids, Division I kids saying, hey, listen, I'm getting lost in the shuffle. I'm got to go down here. I think a really good case, maybe a case in point, would be Tenley Phelps.
Mm-hmm.
Unhappy at Youngstown State, decided, hey, this is a chance for me to come here and play. This is an amazing team culture for me to be a part. Very successful program. An unhappy Division I kid all of a sudden is here, and it changed the landscape not only of your team, but also of your program, and it can extend some of the great things you have going on. So can you speak to how you understand how that Division I athlete, and he could be a starting Division I athlete, not necessarily a bench player, can come in, and how it can make an impact, and how do you go about sitting down with those potential transfers to come down to be a part of your program?
Well, I'll say this, and I don't know if this is factual or not, but my thoughts are, if you want to be in a position to play at a high level, advance in the national tournament, have a chance to win the national championship, you've got to have the reality is, at our level, you've got to have transfer kids. And I bet if you went through rosters of teams that year in and year out are way up there, they probably typically do. So then that gets into, okay, how do we get a transfer kid that's going to fit into our culture? Because oftentimes you may be enamored by someone's talent and ability, but they could come into your program, and if they're not the right type of person, they could blow it up. And so it's kind of tricky. Now, we've been really lucky. We've had a couple high-level transfers. Megan Calloway, probably 10 years ago at Valpo, she was an Indiana All-Star. She was a great fit for us because she was a great person. She understood what team was all about, and that though she was going to be the centerpiece, certain things go along with being the centerpiece that are required. And so the same has happened with Tenley Phelps. You and I talked about this before the Holy Cross game. The great Don Meyer said that, your best player needs to either be your hardest worker or have your best team attitude, or you have no team. So when you're talking about transfer kids coming down, if all of a sudden that's one of your best players, they need to fit in one of those two categories, or you could be in trouble. You might win games and be miserable. And so you got to find the right person in terms of transferring, if they are interested in transferring, and whether they can help you wholly, not just from a skill standpoint. There's a lot more to it than that.
Coop, from your standpoint, Quintez Columbus, perfect example. Jalen Petty didn't necessarily come here. They transferred in, and they played a pivotal role in your team's success the last couple seasons. But there's also, you've had situations where you guys had guys like the legendary Dylan Allen, who may be one of the best all-time, all-around players in program's history. So you got him coming out of high school, and then you have these two kids who were local high school players. They went out and kind of realized, hey, listen, I can do better by being close to home. So those are just a couple examples. Can you speak to how you visualize the transfers coming in from point A to point B?
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of what you do. I don't think you can win without being old. there aren't many national.
That's good to know from my standpoint.
Yeah, got a chance. Good. No, I mean, it's hard to win without experience. And so if you get a guy like Dylan Allen that'll be here for 5 years, yeah, you're going to be more experienced. But, the truth of the matter is, again, we're talking about this transfer portal era that, everybody else is going to go out and get those older guys to stay old. And you can't necessarily build entirely off of 4-year guys anymore, or 4-year girls, as the case may be. But, so you got to have a good mix of both, but you also have to have some balance, I think, in your classes too. So where you don't want to be losing 7 kids in one class or, something like that. And, Coach Bruce's group is a great example of it. They lost 3 of the best players they've ever had last year, but because it was only 3 players and not 6 players, they're able to sustain and keep winning. And I think about the first good team I had here in 2016 when we lost to Robert Morris in the conference championship. We had 6 seniors on that team, and the next year was so difficult to really sustain anything, and really made some mistakes in recruiting and how we brought in too many transfers and things like that. So there's a balance there. I don't know what the perfect thing is, but when the right kid's available, I mean, I'd love to have a Tinley Phelps. Should I take her as she is right now on our team? She's wonderful. But when the right kid's available, you got to take the shot, or you're not going to get better. And I think that's what Coach Bruce has done a really good job of finding that balance. Not only with the Megan Callaways and Tinley Phelps, but even the people like Jess Alexander that he had a few years back, and some of those, or Jasmine Watts right now has been outstanding. So if the kid who's the right fit is available, you got to take the shot, or you're not going to be making your team better.
All right, I know that you guys both have had major impact coaches in your life that have impacted yours. Steve, how much you going to take up? A lot of people don't understand, but you were a pretty good football player.
Well, I was a football player.
Yeah.
A lot of people were football players. So,
Well, Coop, I know that we've got some video on Steve.
Yeah, and if we can get it up here, we're going to pull it up. But I think Coach Bruce's story of how he became a coach, how he became a college basketball coach is outstanding. There's people don't realize, they think there's just one path that you do this, that you come up as a grad assistant, and kind of like I did in the traditional way. But the truth is, people get into this a lot of different ways. And if you see if Coach Bruce and his personality now, to see the person he was as a football player and to see the person he's become as a coach is night and day. So if I can find that clip, we're definitely going to pull it up. But I definitely think it's worth hearing his story, because it's not the quote-unquote traditional way that people got into coaching, and it just shows you that it doesn't matter who you were. You can be a good coach coming through any kind of path.
Your dad was an amazing coach and mentor. Let's talk about the influence that your pops had in your life, and how he's still to this day, even though he's still not with us, but he's still impacted you from teaching you the fundamentals of life, how you treat people, how you go about preparing, all the things that have lead you to be successful over your many, many years. So let's talk about, in addition to your dad, some other coaches who have made an impact in your life.
Well, you and I talk about my father a lot. Anybody who crossed paths with him would be nodding their head probably as I'm talking about him, but he was just a hero to a lot of people. And the thing that stood out most about my dad was his integrity. I was just flawless in how he conducted himself, and so some of that stuck with me. I always say, if I could be 10% of what my dad is or was, I'd be doing pretty well. And I'm trying to get to that level still, But he obviously had great influence on me as just in my whole life, but certainly as a coach. And then, Keith Freeman, the guy I worked with at Valparaiso, another person, super high integrity. Keith's in New Mexico now. I talk to him weekly. Was with him for 7 years at VU, and he offered me the opportunity. I mean, I was an 8th grade boys basketball coach in 1999, and then 3 months later, I was a Division I women's basketball coach. Just because he took a shot at me, took a chance with me, because he had seen me work at a camp or something like that. I was just at the right place at the right time, and things were kind of synchronistically moving at that time. So Keith's another person, and then my influence from Don Meyer, who people in the basketball world know who Coach Meyer was. I was just fortunate to live an hour from Nashville, Tennessee, where Lipscomb University is. I lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky, so I spent a lot of time down there with him. And then then while I was with him, I met his assistant coach, Mike Roller, and those guys were just incredible basketball coaches. And then finally, I worked for a high school football coach who's a Hall of Famer named Dan Haley. And so I would say those 5 have probably had the most influence. Well, not probably, definitely had the most influence on me as a coach.
Did the football coach impact you in a different way than the basketball guys did?
Well, so I would say this: coaching is coaching,
Sure.
right? So if he was a bowling coach, he would have been, a Hall of Famer. He just knew how to communicate, knew how to get the best out of people. He was super organized. So I learned from him about coaching, not specifically about football, but just about coaching. So, and he was just fabulous. Dan Haley was his name. Dan Haley. He's passed on now, and so I've just been very lucky. I've just been very lucky to have been around some great people, and just to have had some of what they had stick with me. Some, not a lot, but some.
Coop, one of your biggest influences, the guy you're sitting next to.
Yeah, no, not just as a coach, but I mean, if anybody ever gets the opportunity to see Coach Bruce coach, I remember sitting with Keith Freeman actually at one of his practices one time. We're just shooting the breeze, and all of a sudden Coach Bruce is setting up whatever drill it is they're doing, and he looks over me. Have you ever seen a person who can use so few words and get his message across so clearly? And it's true. Like, he's one of the best communicators I've ever been around. And I think just having him as an athletic director was huge for me in a whole lot of ways, because one, obviously he's a basketball guy, and I can go in there and talk to him as a basketball coach, and he can turn off the AD hat during that time. But two, just to have a different perspective on things. He and I talk almost every single week about this situation or that situation, whatever it happens to be, and it might have nothing to do with X's and O's. It might be about people and how we're going to handle things, but just having that in right down the hall has been huge. And he was at one point, a while back, he was talking about retiring, refound whatever it was, and I'm glad he did. But I told him, I was like, "You're out the door. I'm out the door here too, brother. Like, this isn't going to be a thing." So I am incredibly grateful that I've had him here the entire time I've been here.
Can you imagine him ranting and raving as a coach? I've never seen that, Steve Bruce, but he tells us that when he was a player and when he was a young whippersnapper a couple years ago, that he was an ordinary cuss. I think can I use that terminology?
I'm very competitive, and sometimes I don't balance I don't handle the space between stimulus and response as well as I should. I've gotten much better at that. But when I was an athlete, I wanted to win. I just wanted to win, and so I got really wrapped up in just the competitive nature of everything, which I still have that.
You were really competitive the other night in the game against Holy Cross, because you were standing right next to me. So I was watching your body language, and you were still. I was watching your facial movements, and it's like your body language is like, man, I was
searching for solutions,
Yeah.
and I don't know about how Scott handles this, but for me, and this is probably the wrong way to do it, but I feel like anything that doesn't go the way it's supposed to go is comes back to me, and so my frustrations are more with myself than with my group. What is it that I could have done better? Why am I not helping them more? How can I teach them? I just frustrated with the game on the other night, and I felt like I got to be better. I got to be better.
Well, I thought I did the IU Northwest game and Coop's game on this past Saturday, and he has got a 7-point lead with 5 minutes to go. His team missed free throws. They make free throws, they win the game. And I'm thinking to myself, he comes up on the post-game show and he's talking a little bit about this and talking about we need to be a little bit better at this, we need to be better at that. And I'm thinking to myself, Coop, you weren't shooting free throws. You weren't the guy out there. So there comes down to a point in time where fundamentally they've got to make shots, and we're not talking about jump shots. We're talking about something that everybody's been doing since they had a basketball in their hand, and that's a 15-foot shot that's uncontested, and you got to make shots in situations. So, Coop, do you beat yourself up over situations like that? I know that you were really disappointed in the loss to IU Northwest, but I also understand the dynamic that you can't make the shots for them.
Yeah, I mean, every coach does that, I think. And if you don't, you don't last because, otherwise, why are you doing this? That you're trying to help people get better at what they do. And if they're not performing, there's probably something you feel like you could have done. The coaches who, throw their players under the bus for that stuff are the ones who typically are the ones who are looking for jobs later, because they don't get it. It's about helping them become the best versions of themselves, not you, and all that stuff. So, it's far more likely that we lost the game than we won the game, and all that stuff. And it's always easier to get blown out sometimes than it is to, lose a close one. And I think part of that is because exactly what Coach is talking about. You start going through every little thing. Oh, could I have done this in this game? Or could I have done this in practice? Or could I have done, whatever it happens to be. You start playing every single situation that didn't go well and think, shoot, did I make a wrong decision or teach them a wrong thing that didn't, that led to that. And the truth is sometimes things just don't go your way. And like we're talking about guys 15-4 this year, we're talking about his losses right now, but like they played IU Northwest the other night, and I thought they had a great game plan. They were getting the ball out of the Carruthers girl's hands. They did a nice job of that, and it comes down to the last possession. They're not going to let her beat them, and she makes an unbelievable pass across the court. It still ends up at the girl's feet, and the girl knocks down a tough shot. And if sometimes you got to put a camera on Coach Bruce during the game because his body language is outstanding. But you can see he's beating himself out about it. And I watch the game, I'm thinking, man, that's a heck of a job coaching. Girl made a play. Sometimes the other team just wins. And those are the ones I think at first you're still beating yourself up about, but then when you really settle down and you're like, sometimes the other team was just better that night, and those you sleep a little bit easier at night. But there aren't many of those when it comes to close games.
All right, so you got an opportunity to sit down and have lunch with anybody in the history of coaching. Conversely, a little bit later on, you're going to get a chance to spend time and have dinner with one person.
Now, I want to interrupt this question because I can tell you firsthand that Coach Bruce has only eaten about 13 times in his entire life. So.
Okay, so who one coach or anybody in the world, who are you going to lunch with? And conversely, 6 hours later, you're going to go to dinner with someone, anybody, whether it be a coach, person. Who's the person, regardless of mom and dad, because I understand that's everybody's wishes to go back and have dinner.
So two people.
Two people. So who are the two people you're going to go to lunch? Who's going to lunch and who's going to dinner?
Well, Dean Smith.
Okay.
We're going to lunch for sure.
Okay.
Let's see, the dinner party.
Coop, you got to be thinking about yours now too, because we haven't talked about that. I think I know who at least one of yours is, but I'm going to speculate.
I say that makes one of us.
I'm going back with the great Don Meyer.
Okay.
Dean Smith and Don Meyer.
Okay. Coop, how about you?
Well, one of mine's going to be Coach Bruce just because I want to see him eat.
You want to see him eat?
People don't know this about him, but I actually have a running tally in my office. So we've worked together for 12 years or whatever it's been now, and I have a running tally in my office of how many times I've actually seen him eat lunch, and it's not a very large number. So yeah, that's definitely.
So he's going to lunch with me just so he can see me eat lunch.
Yeah. No, that's it. I get to talk to him all the other times, so that's not an issue. Well, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I'm absolutely shameless when it comes to this stuff because if there's somebody I want to talk to, I'll just get them up on the phone and try to get a hold of them. But I mean, Jim Tressel would be the first.
I knew it. I knew it.
First ones that
I love his new podcast.
Oh, here's one.
He's tremendous. It's all on leadership.
Yeah. They're probably all football coaches.
No,
I'm saying it
they're not.
Loud. Yeah,
they're not.
No, I mean for me. Yeah,
okay.
For him.
So who's the other one?
Well, then that too. Now I got Coach Bruce in there already. So, yeah, I'm copping out on the answer. Okay. I haven't put any thought into it.
You got any thoughts moving forward here on the show?
Yeah, well, Coach, we do a rapid fire question segment here typically that we just say we just need short answers and stuff in it. So, I had a few here, and I don't know how much time do we have, Tanner. I don't want to run over too much here, so I'll keep it brief. But in all the time that you've worked here, all right, you've had 4 or 5 really high-level transfer players. Who is the least? No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say who's the least impact one.
No, with that one.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I'm trying to get something to go viral here. We don't get a whole lot of Steve Bruce on social media. No, I think I'll stop. Like I said, I had a whole list of them in my head here, but with time, I'm going to ask you one here. In the time that I've worked here, in the time that I've been in college athletics, I've worked for 14 athletic directors, give or take. You were easily the best one I've worked for. Do you want the job back?
I'm going to have to respectfully decline on
All right. Well, that one didn't go how I hoped. But yeah. But no, with time, I'll cut it short today.
So what would be yours?
What would be the
same question to him that you had?
The same question about the athletic, or
the
least impactful transfer?
Yeah.
Least impactful transfer? No, I'm not going to do that. he actually watches the show, so that's why I don't want to do that.
All right, good enough. All right, well, that's going to do it for our broadcast here at the Student Activity Center. It's been my pleasure to hang out with these guys, and thanks to Steve. Been a great friend and great mentor, and a person who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He brought regional radio sports here into the fold to be a part of education-based athletics here at Indiana University South Bend. Great to, as always, for you to take time out of your busy day to join us here on the Scott Cooper Show. Special thanks to Tanner Camp, Fred Maxey for the help on our setup here today. And once again, thank you for joining us here at Indiana University South Bend for Coach Bruce and Coach Cooper, and for all of us at Regional Radio Sports. Thanks for joining us.